Hello, my friends. Let's start right away with the news of a new Ukrainian forces offensive operation already in the Bryansk region. In the Klimovsky district of the Bryansk region, the FSB and Russian armed forces thwarted an attempt by a Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group to infiltrate Russian territory. According to the regional governor, the situation in the area of the clash has stabilized and is now under the control of the regional operational headquarters. Preliminary reports suggest that around 200 fighters were involved in the attack. Later, the governor made a statement. The FSB and Russian armed forces thwarted an attempt by a Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group in the Klimovsky district of the Bryansk region, according to the region's governor Bagamas. We're still waiting for confirmation, but there is a chance this is another fabrication by the Russians to blame Ukraine for aggression and possibly use it as a pretext to enter from Belarus again. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian forces continue to make gradual progress in the Kursk region. Yesterday, they advanced another 12 kilometers and the fighting continues. Efforts are also underway to cut off logistics in the Lgov district. It's important to note that yesterday progress near the villages of Kauchuk and Svatove indicates that the Ukrainian forces haven't changed their plans to move towards Lgov. They have created a partial encirclement around the village of Kauchuk, and it's likely that this area will soon be under Ukrainian forces' control. Currently, there are 18 kilometers left to the highway, and there is a possibility that this route could lead to the Kursk nuclear power plant. In light of this, the head of the IAEA is scheduled to visit the Kursk nuclear power plant at the end of August. Meanwhile, Russian war correspondents are already claiming that Ukraine is planning to hold a referendum in the Kursk region. Reports are coming in from the territory of the Kursk region occupied by Ukrainian nationalist forces that Kiev is preparing a referendum on the annexation of border areas of Kursk to Ukraine's Sumy region. According to local residents who remain in the captured settlements, citing the occupiers, the referendum is scheduled for September 6th. The military commandant's office of the Ukrainian forces in the Kursk region, led by Major General Eduard Moskalyov, along with collaborators from the occupation municipal administrators, are reportedly in charge of overseeing the referendum. Whether this is true or not remains to be seen, but if it does happen, it would be an extraordinary embarrassment for Russia. Meanwhile, on the Kharkiv front, the Russians are trying to carry out an operation as successful as the one the Ukrainian forces executed in the Kursk region. However, the scale of the territory captured by the Russians in this area is much smaller, and for several weeks there have been no changes along the front line. Despite this, assaults on the village of Lyptsi continue. In Vovchansk, battles are ongoing daily. The Russians made small gains of a few hundred meters advancing towards the factory, but that's where their progress ended. The Ukrainian forces continue to destroy all advancing groups. In the Pokrovsk direction, the situation remains the most challenging. The Russians continue to shell Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk, while also carrying out assaults on Hrodivka and Novhorodivka. In fact, the Russians have already managed to enter and secure positions on both settlements. All we can do now is thank those who in over 2.5 years failed to build defensive lines. As you can imagine, Novhorodivka is the beginning of the end. If this town falls under Russian control, it will immediately open a direct path to Pokrovsk. The Russians might then move towards the village of Shevchenko to create a partial encirclement of Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk. Assaults on the village of Mykolaivka are also ongoing, and if the Russians capture this village, they will immediately reach the outskirts of Svatove. Additionally, the battles for Ptyche, Kalinove, and Kharkivka are relentless. Late last night, reports from both the Russians and the Ukrainian forces indicated that Ptyche had already fallen under the control of the Russians. Also, near the highway, the Russians are assaulting Vozdvizhenka and attempting to advance towards Tarasivka. However, over the past 24 hours, there have been no significant changes on this section of the front, and the Ukrainian forces continue to do everything possible to disrupt the Russians' plans. In the Toretsk direction, the situation also remains very difficult. The Russians conducted 24 assaults in just one day, a very high level of activity, and the offensive actions continue towards Nelypivka, and from Zalizne they are pushing towards Toretsk. Shelling continues along the entire front line, but no changes have been reported in the past day. In the Chasiv Yar direction, the Russians continue their offensive operations, attempting to break through via the canal. However, as we can see, the Ukrainian forces are successfully neutralizing these efforts, keeping the situation under control. The battles for Ivanivske and Klishchiivka also persist, while the Russians launching 8 assaults in the past 24 hours. This suggests that this direction has become less of a priority for them. The Russians now seem focused primarily on the Toretsk and Pokrovsk directions. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are assaulting Pereizne and Vyimka. Despite ongoing shelling, they haven't achieved any new successes on this front, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Kreminna direction, battles are ongoing for Nevske, and the Russians continue their attempts to break through towards Serebrianka Forest and near Dibrove. However, the Ukrainian forces are successfully holding the line, and there have been no changes in this area. In the Svatove area, fighting continues around Stelmakhivka, but the situation has stabilized overall. All Russian attacks on Andriivka, Novosarhivka, and Novodanylivka have ended unsuccessfully for them. Further south, fighting is still ongoing as the Russians try to break through the fields towards Kharkivka and assault the village of Mykolaivka. However, there are no changes along the front line. In the Kupiansk direction, fighting continues for Synkivka and Petropavlivka. Further south, battles are ongoing for Berestove, but so far the Russians haven't achieved any new successes in this area. In the Kurakhove direction, there are ongoing battles for Krasnohorivka and the village of Kostyantynivka. The Russians attempted to break through 10 times in the past day, but the Ukrainian forces successfully repelled all attacks, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Vuhledar direction, the Russians are attempting to break through near Vodane, but so far only shelling along the front line has been reported. Russian activity in this area remains low. In the Zaporizhia direction, shelling and offensive actions continue around Novodanylivka and Mala Tokmachka. However, the situation remains unchanged with no significant advances. Meanwhile, the Russians continue to panic, spreading rumors that the Ukrainian forces are preparing for an offensive. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue shell the right bank using aviation, artillery, and FPV drones. There are also periodic attacks on Казачьи Лагері and Песчанivka, but so far there have been no changes along the front line. Russian war correspondents are complaining that the Ukrainian forces are now effectively using FPV drones to take down helicopters. It's clear that drones are becoming a real problem for helicopters. Recently, more aircraft have been hit by drones than by anti-aircraft missiles. Overall, the Russians are gradually realizing that even if the Kremlin's plans are achieved, it will come at an incredibly high cost. Meanwhile, on Russian territory, a fuel depot in the Rostov region has been burning for 4 days. At the fuel depot in Rostov region, which has been burning for 4 days, another tank exploded. Current situation: 14 tanks completely destroyed, 4 partially destroyed, 44 are in unknown condition, and 16 are still intact. Okay. And that's all from me. So please, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye.